I recently did a video about the 5 worst things about the 2026 National. Here's my video about the 5 best things. Apologize, I originally planned to get this out on Saturday, but I got a little busy and ended up going fishing. And it was a successful trip, limited out on silvers, and there were some big ones in the river we were fishing in. It was a lot of fun. It's that time in Alaska, going into August in the fall. Emergency orders come up sometimes, and you get to do some bonus fishing, if you will. So it's a lot of fun, really good time. Now let's get into these 5 best things about the show. Now some people may disagree with a couple of these, and number 1 is probably going to be one of those. So I thought that the VIP lounge was great. I think it's a good opportunity to go in there, take a little breather, have some lunch, communicate with fellow collectors. I love the fact that people are in there trading cards. It's pretty cool to be able to walk around and see some things that you may not see on the show floor. Where I do think it got a little excessive this year is that some people had actually brought in showcases. And like a lot of things, there's always a couple that have to mess things up for everybody else. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of complaining about that aspect, because then it's basically like, well, you almost like have a table at the show without paying for a table at the show. So I thought the showcases were a bit far, in my opinion, and will probably spur some sort of action. But outside of that, I do like using the VIP lounge. I do like the idea that people are able to trade cards. I had a lot of good conversations with fellow collectors, and you learn some things about cards by having those types of conversations in places like the VIP lounge. And so for that, I really did enjoy it. Some people had reported not being able to get a table because it was so busy. I never really had that problem. We went in and went to the right-hand side each time, and I never spent more than like 5 minutes looking for some place to sit. And so we didn't have that sort of problem in our experience. So by all means, feel free to comment away about that one if you had a different experience. But overall, I'd say it was a net positive. 2, this is always a major benefit of the show, and it was no different this year. I always find cards at the National that I didn't even know I wanted. Cards that I was not even specifically looking for, but are great additions to my personal collection. A couple specific examples. This Net Effect Shaq that I was able to pick up. It's not a very easy card to find, especially PSA graded. The pop is in the 60s, so it's a low pop card. It's got a really cool design. Shaq prices, in my opinion, have lagged way behind Kobe. That part's not really an opinion. They have lagged way behind Kobe. But I always found that over the last few years, Shaq's really been pretty low priced relative to his performance on the court. And so I always try to pick up a Shaq card or two. This was my pickup from this show. The other one was this Luka Flawless. It's a Flawless diamond card. It's PSA 7, but it's pop 1. I wasn't looking for a Net Effect Shaq. I wasn't looking for this Luka Flawless, but they were cards that basically it spoke to me when I saw them at the show. And this happens all the time. You find stuff that you weren't really looking for, but they're high eye appeal cards, or they're cards that you think have good potential into the future, as far as like value. You recognize their rarity, and if nothing else, they're cards that you think may become quite a bit more difficult to acquire in the future, and you get the opportunity at this show. Because I've said it once, and I'll continue saying it, and some people will still continue to disagree. The National is the place to go to find rare cards. It's not even close. There's no other place that offers this opportunity, and that's how it made number 2 on my list. Number 3. Mentioned it a little bit in the VIP lounge, but I created a separate category for this. The conversations at the show are basically second to none. I mean, I have not heard the numbers this year, but you get into the 6 figures of people that are in attendance of the show. I was able to talk to a friend of mine, TBP. It was great running into him multiple times at the show and kind of bouncing ideas off him and vice versa. I met one of the guys from Stone Chase. They have a really popular YouTube channel. Had a really good conversation. with him about the show. Is their first national this year, and we're just able to stop for like 5 minutes and have a good conversation. I saw him upstairs one day, and I was able to chat with him for a while. It was interesting hearing his perspective, having gone to, West Coast shows and some of these other big shows as well. Met some viewers of the channel, people like Roy and Anthony and Ben and others. And I apologize if I forgot your name. Feel free to comment. I do my best. The days get pretty busy and you're kind of like all over the place looking at cards and trying to make decisions, and you have a lot of conversations. But those are a few names that stand out to me. It was great to meet you guys this year. Hope to see you guys again next year at the show. The other part of this too was the conversations with dealers this year. I always have a lot of good conversations with them because, I never put showcase footage in any of my videos without asking permission from the dealers. I just think it's a respect thing. So I always talk to the dealers about that in advance. And every year I have a dealer or two that just declines and they don't want me to, and I'm totally fine with it. That's the reason why I'm asking. If they don't feel comfortable with me doing that, then I don't do it. And it's totally fine. I don't have any hard feelings or anything like that. I'm not putting anybody on blast. I just see it as a sign of respect to ask. But two examples of conversations with dealers in particular. One dealer, it was toward the end of the day, I think it was on day 3, had asked, hey, picking up anything cool? And I was like, yeah, actually, I really have. I never anticipated ever seeing this card. He's like, okay, let me see. And I showed it to him, and it was that LeBron Their Money rip card. And the dealer knew what it was. And he's like, you found that here? Like, you never see these. Now, after the fact, I saw that one had recently sold on eBay, a PSA 8 for like $1,100, which I was kind of bummed because I would have bought that one too. But the dealer was like genuinely excited because they love cards and they knew what that card was. And they're just like, man, I haven't seen one of these in person for years. And it was the same for me. So just like general excitement when talking to dealers about cards, because there's a lot of dealers that are just kind of in it for the money, but there's still a ton of them that genuinely love cards and they get excited when they see stuff that's hard to find. And I think that's one of the priceless things about the National that you just don't get when you're at home, searching on eBay. You just don't get that same feeling. Second interaction is going to tie into number 4 on my list, and this one is going to upset some people probably. Very little TCG at the show. There are groups of people that are hoping and wishing that TCG is going to overtake the National. They're predicting that it's going to swing and a miss. There was very little TCG at this show, which kind of makes sense because it is the National Sports Collectors Convention. It's not what dealers are target. It's not the dealers' target audience. This is not some small regional show that's been overtaken by TCG. A very, very small percentage, again, of booths had even a showcase of TCG. With that said, and to be fair, I had 2 conversations with 2 separate dealers about TCG at the show. First, when I talked to them, just like, hey, I see you've got a TCG case, showcase. So what has been your take about TCG at the show? And they were concerned. They're like, it has been far less popular than I thought. I know that this show is a majority of sports cards, but we brought some thinking that we would sell a bunch, and maybe some of those prices are starting to crack because we've had a hard time selling TCG. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay. So I went and talked to another dealer the next day, in all fairness, and they had completely the opposite experience. They had 1 or 2 showcases, and I'm like, hey, tell me, so what's your experience been with sales of TCG at this year's show? And for them, it was phenomenal. They're like, oh, we've only got this case or 2, and we've turned those cases a couple times already. They had sold like tens of thousands of dollars worth of TCG cards. So, small sample size, I only talked to 2 dealers about it. One, very disappointed, not selling a lot. The other had a great experience. So those are the only 2 dealers that I talked to about it. But as a sports card collector, I was quite pumped to witness and quite pumped to be able to say very little TCG at the National. Fantastic. All right, last one. Examining raw cards. Listen, so you got to assume, right, if cards are from the mid to late 90s or early 2000s, that if they're not graded, there's probably something wrong with them. And I think that's a safe assumption in many scenarios. However, there are still groups of people, and I apologize if you can hear my dog scratching at the door. There are a lot of people still that don't grade any cards. And I remember mentioning this on one of my videos from the National. If you haven't watched those, by the way, I have a National video for each day. So go back and give those a look. And if you haven't subscribed, you know, if you'd consider subscribing, that would be awesome. I appreciate it. But I mentioned this on a previous video where I got to a dealer's booth and he had a ton of raw Michael Jordan cards. This actually happened a couple times. And, you know, my first thought is, well, you know, there's probably a reason, right? But then he started explaining like, hey, you know, I had somebody walk up with a raw collection. They didn't have any graded cards. I bought all of them from them and I priced them last night and put them out there. That got my attention. Because here's the thing. You can say, well, yeah, there's probably something wrong with these cards. But when you get to examine them in hand, you can tell, like on the spot. And so I was able to pick up a stack of raw, like Jordan, Kobe, those types of cards, a little bit of LeBron at this year's show. I'm going to go over those cards and kind of go through them this week. I plan on making another video about some of those raw cards and like prepping them for grading. And just in general, I plan on releasing one video a week going forward. I'm going to shoot for Saturdays each week. Some weeks it may be Sundays. You know, there's some busy times coming up. But one video a week for sure. And one of my upcoming videos, there's going to be 2 parts to it. I'm going to go through those raw cards that I picked up at the National and kind of see what kind of shape they're in and give you kind of an honest assessment of those. And 2, I just had a grading order pop this morning that was all Kobe Bryant. And you can imagine like all those values have gone up in the 5 to 6 months since I sent that order in. It was a value order. So that's coming as well. So stay tuned. Got a lot of videos coming up. Excited about the hobby. This year's National was absolutely fantastic. I'll put forth another video also about things that you can be doing if you're considering going to next year's show. Feel free to leave any comments if there's any specific type of National related content that you'd like to see. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.